Good morning, everybody. Happy Sunday. Welcome to Social Distancing Sunday School. I see that there are 149 of you already here. I'm so excited about that. I am on skates coming in from my Sunday school class with my church, and we're still on Zoom. I think I've ended the meeting or left the meeting, but I'm here with you all now. So I'm glad that you're here. Thank you so much for being here. Let me see. I've got a ton of people here. So good morning, Brother Ronald. All right, Brother Ronald, we'll be praying for you. Sister Anna, is that Shalonda, Sandra, JC, Bernice? Oh, Sister Sheila Monroe. Sister Pamela here with me in Dallas. Pamela Johnson in Fredericksburg, Virginia. There are a ton of you here. Sister Mary in St. Louis, good morning. I see you all. I'm glad that you're here. I hope that you have everything that you would normally have for your Sunday school class. That you've got, if you're a commentary user, I have a commentary with me. I have my Bible with me. I have notes from my previous class with me. And this is actually my third Sunday school this morning. So I visited with another church on the East Coast in their Zoom at 8:30 my time. I went on to my own at 9, and now I'm here with you all. So I'm excited. We have a really great lesson on today. So I see your good mornings. I am going to ask you this, that if you will just remember, there are 152 of you in here now. Remember to click that thumbs up like button for me, and 33 of you have done that already, and I appreciate it. Also want to let you know that you are welcome to use the super chat button that's down at the bottom. There is never a charge to participate in any of the live teachings here, but I always invite you to share with this ministry if it's been a blessing to you. The super chat button is down below, and then you can also share by Cash App. And you are welcome to share. My ask is if you will please consider today an offering for our Sunday school class of $3. That is my request as we get started here. All right, let's get into our lesson. Oh, we're up to 2:14. Thank you again. Don't forget to click that thumbs up button for me. All right, let's see here. Here we go. Hold on here. All right. Okay, I'm almost ready. I have people who are texting me now. They just woke up. Okay. All right, I'm almost ready. Let's go to Isaiah chapter 42. And we are going to read verses 1 through 9. And before we do, I know I did this on Markup Monday, but just start to give me your Sunday school lesson title. Most of you probably have God's Just Servant. And if you have anything different, I would love to see that as well. But let me know what your lesson title is. And we are getting started now. Let me know what your lesson title is. What is your lesson title for today? God's Just Servant is my lesson title. And I see that some of you have the exact same, a just servant. Thank you, Sister Regina Moody. Sister Amina, thank you for using the super chat and being a blessing. Seeking a champion of justice. I love that, Brother Michael. And so interesting, I'm going to kind of use Brother Michael's title, and that's also the same for Sister Laura. When I did the children's lesson this week, I talked about heroes. Thank you, Hair Twin, for being a blessing to the ministry. And yes, it is Palm Sunday. It is Palm Sunday. It is Palm Sunday. So we've got our lesson title here, and we're going to read verses 1 through 9. Before we jump into the lesson, let's go ahead and pray. Father, thank you for this another Lord's Day. We honor you on this day because it is the day that you have made. And wherever we are and however we have to do it, we are not dependent upon brick and mortar, but inside of us is a determination to rejoice and be glad in it. God, we bring to you today the same heart, the same rejoicing, the same spirit of excellence that we would if we were in any brick and mortar, because we realize that you're not just housed in a building. It is not about the church, but you give us an opportunity to be the church. And so thank you today that we have access to you, even from our homes, that we have access to you and we have access to your word. Thank you today that we have this space to study your word, to be made better by your word. Teach us what it means today to be servants and how that looks to serve you in a better way. Thank you for new ways to serve you, even in this space. Thank you that you're opening up our opportunity and our creativity. And I bless you, God, that others are going to see your light shining through us. I ask that you bless every person who's present on today. Bless us in our homes, bless our health, keep us safe. God, I even pray for those today who do need your healing touch, who need your healing hand. I pray for every person who may even be grieved in this space that we're in. God, we understand that everybody is not experiencing the same thing. So there are some of us today who are hurting, who are suffering loss. And I pray today that you will be comfort and strength to those individuals. Now bless our time together. Help us to be made different by your word. We love you in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. So DSW, thank you so much. I see why I was praying that you bless the ministry. I appreciate that. All right. So I talked about superheroes with the younger kids, and I'm just curious, who was your favorite superhero? And it can be fictional. It can actually be someone. I'm just asking, who's your hero? It can be a superhero. It could be your hero. But who have you ever looked at in your life as a hero? Who have you looked at as a hero? And the youth topic is, are you the right one to lead? Oh, thank you, Miss LaTanya Lee. I'm glad you're here for the first time from St. Mark. Oh, I'm Mount Bayou. Okay, awesome. Awesome, awesome, awesome. In fact, if you're a first timer, say hello and let me know that so I can say hello to you. I'm going to do my best to do that. Sister Deborah, I see you in my hometown. All right. Your mother, Sister Tracy. Absolutely. Jesus, Sister Carlotta. I love it. My father, Brother Kevin Ricks. I loved my daddy too. He was my hero. I love my mama. She's amazing. But I was a daddy's girl. I really was. Thank you, Michael Whitehead, Batman, Wonder Woman. I see you, Cherie Epps. I love it. Sherilyn Jones, parents. Oh, Bernadette Ricks, my grandmother Lucas. I love that. Okay, there's another Wonder Woman lover. And hello, Classic Cars Rock. Welcome for the first time. Welcome, Chris from DC. First time. So I see a lot of you are talking about parents as heroes. We look to the life of Jesus, and we're going to see that. And why do I use the term hero? Why would I associate that with this lesson? Because we're going to see, thank you, Bernita Brooks, we're going to see that Israel needed, in essence, what was a hero. A hero typically is someone that we look up to for their strength, for their courage, and maybe even for their ability to rescue. And we see this hero, if you will, in the form of a servant. That's what we see is a servant, and that being Jesus Christ. And as we read, I think that we will pick up a lot of what it means to be a servant, what it looks like to be a servant, and find ways that we can model our own ability to serve. Our lesson titled, God's Just Servant, Bible basis, Isaiah 42, verses 1 through 9. The Bible truth, Isaiah prophesies about God's servant who will restore justice, the coming Messiah. Our memory verse is verse 1, and the lesson aim is that we will evaluate the concept of Messiah, sense the wonder of Jesus's role as servant to the nations, and imitate Jesus as a servant of God who executes justice. I'm reading verses 1 through 9 in the King James Version. Behold, actually, I'm going to switch to the Amplified. I have both in my commentary. Behold my servant whom I uphold, my chosen one in whom my soul delights. I put my spirit upon him, and he will bring forth justice to the nations. He will not call out or shout aloud, nor make his voice heard in the street. A broken reed he will not break off, and a dimly burning wick he will not extinguish. He will not harm those who are weak and who are suffering. He will faithfully bring forth justice. He will not be disheartened or crushed in spirit. He will persevere until he's established justice on the earth. And the coastlands will wait expectantly for his law. This is what the Lord God says. He who created the heavens and stretched them out, who spread out the earth and produced, who gives breath to the people in it and spirit to those who walk on it. I am the Lord. I have called you the Messiah in righteousness for a righteous purpose. I will also take you by the hand and keep watch over you. And I will appoint you as a covenant to the people of Israel, as a light to the Gentile nations, to open the eyes of the blind, to bring out prisoners from the dungeon, and to those who sit in darkness from the prison, I am the Lord, that is my name. My glory I will not give to another, nor my praise to carved idols. Indeed, the former things have come to pass. Now I declare new things. Before they spring forth, I proclaim them to you. And this is the word of the Lord. As we're looking at this servant, so again, this is a lesson that starts to tie together a lot of what we've been studying in this quarter as we've looked at the lives of the children of Israel. You know that they were special to God. God loved them. They were his people, but they just didn't always get it right. And we know how that feels. We don't always get it right, but God loved them enough that even when they would get off track, he would always send a prophet who gave them a word, gave them a warning. He was always trying to give them that space to get back to where they needed to be. And he wanted that because they were his people and he loved them. And he always warned them. I think about this. I think I may have mentioned it last week that if you ever, well, at least for us, if we were getting in trouble, you know, you kind of would hear it in mom's voice. She would say it once. Now, I know some mothers only say it once and then you're in big trouble, but especially if you're in public, you know, you have to say it. And then there's a way that you kind of talk through your teeth, and that kind of tells your child, I am not playing with you. And that's that kind of warning you hear. When moms talk through their teeth, that is the official warning that she's probably not talking much longer. The next thing is going to be something that is going to require some type of punishment or some type of justice in a way. And so I think about that as I read the words of these prophets, that it seems that God is always giving them that opportunity. But if you don't do these things, there is definitely, yes, Sister Carlotta, moms have a look, like no kidding on that. I as children in church, there was a look all the way across the church that you could get. And so, yes, we do that for sure. And here are these prophets who give these continual warnings so that God's people can get right. A few weeks ago in Habakkuk, we saw that with Habakkuk when Habakkuk looks around and everything is just off. He's looking at all of the injustice. Everything is really crazy. He says, God, listen, how long are you going to do this? I am crying every day. I am crying and you don't hear me. You're not doing anything. And God finally responds and he says, I've got a plan. My plan is I'm going to use the Babylonians and they're going to overtake Israel and you guys are going to lose everything. And Habakkuk's thinking, that's not really what I had in mind. You kind of took it too far, God. And don't you know the Babylonians are horrible people? You know, how are you going to use people who are worse than us to judge us? And God establishes his plan. But he also says in our lesson about consequences that it wasn't that he didn't see, and it wasn't that the Babylonians would go without consequence. So ultimately, we see that justice being brought in through this servant. So make those connections and know that the Babylonians did indeed overtake Israel, and they were in captivity again. And I define captivity as a crisis. What is your definition of a crisis? What is your definition of a crisis? And yes, Sister Julie Boyce, the tone of a mother changes. God's tone has changed. And yes, the Babylonians had overtaken them. What is your definition of a crisis? And while you're giving me those, I'll tell you about this particular crisis. I see it. It's a loss of control. Absolutely. Sister Bridget, you said the look gets a better effect. Absolutely. It is a mess, Sister Faye McCain. Something out of your control. Something overwhelming. You all are saying some similar things here. So there's situations that we just can't get our arms around. And I don't know about you, but as I read this lesson this week, we are in the middle of a crisis. We are actually living out now a world crisis. Now, a lot of us have experienced things in our lives that have been crisis to us as individuals. So, you know, maybe we've experienced loss of a job. That's a crisis. I've done that, lost a job before. I was underemployed for about almost a span of 3 years as a single female with a house note to pay. That was a crisis to me. When I think about the loss of loved ones, I've lost a parent, all of that felt like crisis. And in the middle of crisis, what are some of the questions that we have in crisis? What are some of the things that we worry about or think about in crisis? And you're describing it as complete chaos, an emergency. Oh, Brother Chris, an unexpected showstopper. Wow, absolutely. The threat of loss. That is something that we think about. What does that mean to lose what we're comfortable with? Yes, thank you. And I see the questions coming. Why? Why, God? We worry about, I see the word bills. And when I think about bills, for me, it's just resources in totality. How are things going to happen? Oh, I love these questions. And these are real. Like we are experiencing this now. When will it be over? How long? Why me, God? How am I going to make it? What have we done? Wow, Sister Lorene, I think it is. What have we done? You wonder if you'll ever make it through. Shervelle Thomas says chaos, fear, anxiety, uncertainty. Ms. Roy 04, what next? Why? And I see all the questions. And I related the chaos of now to the way people in captivity must have felt. And I thought about the fact that the Bible tells us that there's nothing new under the sun. So this isn't the first time God has had to show himself in the midst of chaos, in the midst of a crisis. So I see your crisis questions. Absolutely. So this is what the children of Israel warred with. So here is God through his prophet, and he sends a word that talks about a future time that says, you won't always be in what you're in now. I am going to send someone as your rescue. And when we talked earlier about superheroes and about people that we looked up to, the words, maybe I'm confusing my classes. Next question. What is it about a hero? What is it that we look to in a hero? Why are we encouraged when the hero shows up? Or what is affirming about or comforting about the hero's presence? That's my next question. So what is it about a hero that their presence makes us feel better, or something about what they do? What is it about the hero? And so here is God saying that I'm going to send my servant. And it is the confidence that they have. It is the answers that they seem to bring. One thing I said 2 weeks ago was, things just didn't seem so bad when Daddy was here. My daddy was he just seemed to know the answers. And even when I moved away from home, he was just that guy who would call and say, do you have this? Do you have that? Have you thought about this or that? I see your answers. They have this ability to make us feel like they saved us. They show us love. They know they're going to rescue. When the hero is here, he saves. It's going to be better. We know that there's deliverance. And those are the same concepts that would have come into the minds of the children of Israel, to know that God was going to send someone, his servant in verse 1, it tells us, that would be a deliverer. And all of these things that you're saying are what we expect of the hero, but we expect the hero to come in a certain package. And they were expecting their Messiah, their hero, their savior to come as a conquering warrior, someone who would have been mighty in battle, a very strong presence. But here is the description we get of a hero who looks nothing like they would have expected. Judah had hope of a Davidic king that would restore justice, but they had a way that they thought this person would look. And so this is the scripture that begins to describe what that looks like. Verse 1, and I am hiding some troll comments here. Forgive me for being distracted, and let me just get that person over to the block ministry. We're going to put them that's ministry right there on the block. There we go. They've been sent to the block. Verse 1 talks about this hero. So behold, tells us to stop what we're doing. Stop and look at what's about to be said. Behold, I'm going to send my servant. Behold, my servant. This is the Lord talking through his prophet. And I didn't tell you enough about Isaiah in the background. He is a major prophet, son of Amos, Amoz, not the prophet Amos. And he prophesied during the time of, I think, 5 kings, my background says. And he was a man who was married, had a family, had a couple of children. But his message was largely about the hope of a coming Messiah. The book of Isaiah has 66 chapters. It's often called a Bible within a Bible. Like the Bible, it has 66 chapters, as the Bible has 66 books. And the first 39 chapters read a lot like the Old Testament. And then the remaining 27 read a lot like the New Testament. So structurally, it is a lot like the Bible. And here is this prophet now, a major prophet, meaning that his time was a longer time of service and ministry, speaking as the voice of the Lord. And he says, look, my servant. The Lord is introducing a new character, a new hero on the scene. And I love it because we get a description of his servant in verse 1. And I kind of broke verse 1 up into two pieces. What do we learn about this servant in verse 1? Well, the first thing is that he is a servant. And he doesn't introduce him as a warrior, as a king, as anybody who comes to take over. This idea that he will serve, he will be able to put his own needs aside for the interest of someone else, to be able to offer ministry to other people. And he talked about a servant in chapter 41. Chapter 42 shows the difference. Israel was a servant, but this servant was unlike anything they had ever seen. I love the word my. Behold, my servant. I love the possessive, the ownership that God takes of his servant. And in verse 1, you should see that he's really proud of the servant. And here's my next question for you as I am continuing in verse 1. Have you ever had somebody in your life and you knew that they were really proud of you? Who is that person in your life, or those people that you know have been really proud of you, proud to talk about you, happy to introduce you and your ministry or your capability to other people? Tell me who that was. So he's my servant. Tell me that in the comments. He's my servant. He's sent by God. So he's not just another person that's born into the world, but God has ordained this servant for this particular time, and he's God's elect. That means that he is chosen by God. And here's what I love, and this is where my question comes from. These words that he delights in him. That means that he approves of him. His assignment of this servant is intentional. It's no mistake. And the language there reminded me of even when he says at the baptism, this is my beloved son in whom I am well pleased. And even as I looked at verse 1, I thought about the announcements that were always made concerning Jesus. At the time of his baptism, there was an announcement when they were on the mountain and the disciples recommended, hey, why don't we build temples, build 3 temples? There was an announcement made. Even on the cross, there were always these big announcements concerning Jesus. And so his father was well pleased with him. And I see those people that have been proud of you, your dad, your family. Oh, your children are proud of you. I know that has to mean something. My pastor's wife. Thank you, Brother Kevin Ricks, for being a blessing. Your daughters, your godmother. Absolutely. These are beautiful. And you know what? It is meaningful to know that there are people who are proud of us. I continue in verse 1, and I group 1 through 4 together because here we find out about sort of his job description, and we find out what type of person he's going to be. If you serve in any role, anywhere, it's always helpful to know what is expected of you in that role. In fact, if any of you ever interview for a job, here's one of my free interview questions. I always say, describe someone. When they say at the end, do you have any questions? One of my standard interview questions is, can you describe or tell me about someone who does exceptionally well in this position? Here, I think we find out what this servant will do exceptionally well. There are 6 things that I saw. Thank you, Sister Tracy, for sharing your Sunday school offering with us today. 6 things that I saw. The first thing is that he's going to bring judgment. He's going to execute justice. So he'll be the judge of righteousness. You see that again in Isaiah 61. What is it to bring justice? Well, in a court system, you know, I know a little bit about the court system. It is where you are giving a person what they deserve. The language you'll hear is getting your just deserts, that you get what you should get based on the crime that you've committed or the infraction that you committed, whether it is a fine, whether it is an injunction, whether it is time served, whether you have to pay money back to a harmed party. Thank you, Maylene Walker, for being a blessing to the ministry. It is that ability to decide right from wrong and decide who gets what they deserve. Let's see here. The second thing that I see, and let me talk about justice again. Remember, this was bringing justice in the middle of chaos. They were looking for that person who would come and settle the score for everything that had brought them harm. The second thing I see starts to talk about his nature. So the second thing is his quiet demeanor. Again, not coming in with the big splash. And think about the birth of Jesus Christ. He didn't come with all the fanfare. It wasn't a big splash. He came in a stable, in a manger, very unassuming. Even his entry and his existence, the way he moved. Thank you, Brother Christopher, for sharing with us. This means that he is going to be modest in ministry. And I really thought about that this week, that you don't need your name shouted everywhere. Minister, do the job that God has called you to do. Do your assignment. You don't have to shout your own name in the street. You don't have to go out and tell everybody how wonderful you are. The lesson says he won't lift up his voice in the street. So it was an unassuming thing about him. I thought about also my dad this week, and I don't know, I may have mentioned this in one of my conversations, but my dad was like, he was a quiet presence. He could be in the room and his presence was big, but his voice, if he raised his voice, everything stood still, because that wasn't his demeanor. He was quiet. He could come and go. And yet by the work that he did, you knew that he was the man of the house. You knew by the way he provided. You knew from the way he loved his family. But it wasn't because of his yelling voice. It wasn't because he had to say, I'm the man, I do. But you knew it by the way that he worked. And so I see you all are saying here that, yes, it talks about his humility, that you serve without telling the world. Humble service. I see what you're saying here. Absolutely. Verse 4, Brother Kevin, is so powerful. We're going to get there. I'm on my way there. I agree with you. Let's run to I'm still inside of verse 3, I think. Now we talk about his gentle nature, how he handles people. The metaphor we have here, LB Dawson, thank you so much for sharing through the super chat. We see his gentle nature. And so there's a visual that we get. It's a metaphor of a reed. And the bruised reed, as I looked at it in my study, dealt with the reeds along the marsh, that you'd find reeds kind of bent over, whether it was from environmental damage or maybe someone who had walked on them in the past. My co-teacher this morning gave a great description of the reed. She's a musician, former musician in high school, and I think she played obviously a wind instrument, but she says that the reed, so whether you played like a clarinet or a saxophone, you remember the reed and I remember saying, I played the violin. So I watched the band, people who would suck on the reed for a long time to make sure that it was nice and moist and all that, and they could play. But what she shared in class this morning is that when that reed became chipped or splintered in any way, it didn't mean that the reed was not usable, but you had to be very careful with how you handled it, how you played on it. Same idea with these reeds. And when I looked at this, a bruised reed, meaning when he walks up on the reed, it didn't say that Jesus bruised the reed. It was bruised when he found it. And I thought about this really tells us about how he handles people, that when he finds people who are harmed, who have been hurt, who have been damaged, there's just a way that he handles them with gentleness. He doesn't mishandle those, even those who've been battered by sin, who've been battered by life. My question for you is, how is it possible for leaders to mishandle people? And I don't mean, please don't take this as a bashing of pastoral leadership. It can be in your job. It can be anywhere. But how is it possible? How have we seen examples of leaders who have mishandled people, added damage to people? And I'll keep talking and I'll look for some of those answers. But when he finds that reed that is already limp, what he doesn't do is step on it and break it. He handles it in a different way so that he can still use it, but he knows that it's fragile. He knows that it's weak. I see you, that he does not tear us down. He doesn't come to crush us. He comes to build us. Asia Frazier, yes, you are still using reeds. You're a saxophone. And Sister Cynthia, thank you so much for the super chat. I appreciate it. Drashelle E, thank you for the super chat. Yes, leaders who think more highly of themselves than you. leaders who crush people, leaders who talk down to people. Yes, you have to be careful in how you approach people. And as I was sharing with my class this morning, it doesn't even mean that you have to be the pastoral leader, but whether you're teaching Sunday school, if you're on the worship team, I don't care what kind of leader you are. If you are on the usher board, there are ways that we have to handle God's people. We talk about people coming into our ministries and people that we meet on our jobs each day. And in the world, we know it's full of hurting people. And as people of God, we don't want to be the ones who are isolating people and belittling people. I'm looking at the things that you're saying that are judgmental, that bring open rebuke. We're not the ones that beat people down. We're not the ones who threaten other people or feel threatened by their gifts. We don't lie to them. I see the things that you're saying, but there's a gentle nature with which we should handle people, because our job, his job, was to bring restoration, and we're seeing that. Let me keep moving here, because not only do we see his gentle nature, he's not going to crush them. He's not going to destroy them. He won't hurt a wounded soul that's already wounded, but he's also going to be full of mercy. And we see that in the smoking flax. What is the smoking flax? My mom is from the country, and I remember seeing the kerosene lamps at my grandparents' house. And so that's what I thought of with this. And the kerosene lamps, and some of you know what they are, have oil in them. And when the oil is completely burned out, the wick inside is what carries the flame. And once the oil is gone, the wick may still be burning. That's the flax. And in their time, the smoking flax would have just been put out. You would snuff it out. I kind of thought about when we have those burners under like food at large family events. When it's over, you take the cap or something and try to cover the little burner to snuff them out. But it says that he doesn't do that. And this part of the scripture really blessed me, because the oil is that reserve that keeps it burning. But the oil in us is the oil of God, the anointing, that thing that keeps us fueled and keeps us burning. And when he sees that the oil reserve is depleted, he doesn't damage it. He doesn't throw it away. He doesn't crush it. He doesn't snuff it out. Why? Because the flax is still burning. That means it's still got some capability. If it had more oil, it would continue to burn and light the lamp. And so he doesn't snuff out its purpose, but he has the ability to restore the oil. And even as I prayed this week, I asked God, in those areas that I feel depleted, I am asking you to restore my oil, replenish my oil. As you're praying, a lot of us are feeling the weight of now. There is kind of a smoking happening with us, but ask God to restore your oil. We are yet able to burn. We are yet able to be the light. Thank you, Sister Iasia. And I see your comment. Some leaders try to put a vision in place without taking the proper time to plan or evaluate it, end up hurting workers in the process. I agree. But we see here the gentle nature. We see mercy, his restoring the oil, restore, anoint us again, restore the oil. And in the fifth thing I see is his bringing judgment into truth. And we see the quality of truth being associated with him. Man tries, but we never agree on what is just. And that is why it is this servant's job to determine what is just. What do I mean? Did I say we don't agree with what is just? Well, very practically in the court system, if someone is charged of a crime of any sort, or even in civil court, you may have an idea. If your car is hit by someone, you may have an idea of how much money you should be given for the damage caused to your car or medical bills. That may not be what the court awards to you. It may not be as much as you think. When criminal acts take place, typically you got one family who wants the maximum penalty. We want justice. And you have another family that's thinking, I don't want my family member to lose their lives. I don't want them to be locked up forever. I don't want them to face death penalty. So there's always this imbalance of what each party believes that justice is. And here's what it's telling us, that he's going to bring forth truth. He will have the ability to decipher and make the decision on who deserves what. The final thing is that he's not going to fail. But before I get into the sixth thing, I hope that you've seen so far that the servant's purpose those things that we really described are really about healing and restoration. Healing and restoration. And so as we think about the role of Jesus, the Messiah in our lives today, he comes to bring healing and restoration. The sixth thing that we see, and thank you, Sherry Rogers, for blessing the ministry, and I think Brother Kevin said we were going to see this, is that he doesn't fail in his assignment. That he's been sent to do, he is going to accomplish that thing. Not only will he not fail in it, but he is not going to get discouraged. And so many of us have to work through discouragement, because that's the thing. It's not even necessarily that all is lost in the work, but when they haven't gone the way that we expect them to go, when we're not getting the results that we want to have, it is so easy to walk away. When we served in places for so long, it's easy to get burned out. So here's my next question for you. How do you avoid burnout? Or you can answer, how do you get back into the swing of things if you have faced burnout? How do you avoid burnout? Or tell me how you get back into the swing of things if and when you get burned out. So again, we see that he completes his assignment. Psalm 138:8 tells us that the Lord will perfect that concerning us. And because this servant came to people, he came to people who were flawed, people who were fragile. And when I looked at this, and the fact that he was assigned to people, serving people is a job. It is a job. There are times, and I think about leaders in Sunday school. I think about pastoral leaders. It seems like you labor with people, and sometimes you go, man, are we still in the same place? Are people growing? Are they being made better? But here we see the servant who doesn't tire even when people are not maturing at the levels that we think that we should. And that's usually based on our own experience. I think you should be here by now, but he doesn't get tired. Let's see what you're saying. You pace yourself. Much prayer and meditation, praying and waiting on God. Elder Kelly says the mission is repeated 3 times in the first 4 verses. Remember what he has called you to do. Oh, Sister Dora, I love this. Train others to avoid burnout so God can use them. That's huge. He didn't just call you. You ought to be training somebody to work alongside you and ultimately not be so intimidated that you don't know that ultimately somebody's going to replace you. So I love that. Getting rest and rejuvenation, Sister Wanda, and reconnecting with the core of who I am. Sister Julie Boyce loves to sing and listen to music. I go into seclusion for a day to rebuild my strength and my mind. Oh, we are praying for you. As a nurse, it gets really stressful. Praying for you. You all add Sister Julie to our list as a first responder, people that you're praying for. Step back, getting refilled, going on a retreat. I like that, Sister Aisha. Sister Shirley, I like to ask someone to share in the teaching of Sunday school. Awesome. I love this. Oh, Sister Cherie, I made a post about this back in November. It was November. I needed to practice saying no. And sometimes we allow ourselves to get burned out because we don't balance and we don't say no. So there's an opportunity for us to think about that. Think about those things that come to discourage us and learning to find a way to create that balance and push through like this servant so that we don't get discouraged in our assignment. Revival is what we need. I see you, Sister Anna. And Sister Liv Howard says, review expectations and then prioritize them. Absolutely. You can't do everything for everyone all of the time. And I love it. Sister Carol Davis, cast all your cares on him. I love that. Let's move on to verses 5 and 6. Here we see that it is God who calls his servant, and it is God. In fact, Isaiah has to make clear that it's not me telling you this is going to happen, but it is God, the same God from Genesis who created everything that you see around you. He has the authority and the power to do what he said he would do. And he calls his servant in righteousness. He would be a holy servant. I love this. He has his hand on his servant, and he always is present with his servant. Again, he endorsed the sending of his servant, and he would always be present with him. And why was the servant sent? Yes, the servant was sent for Israel, but not just for Israel, but to be a light to Gentile nations. And even in our own service, why does God assign us in the places that we're in? It's not just for us. Your assignment is not just for your local church. Your assignment is not just for your family, but as you step into the streets, Well, we're not in the streets right now, but as you go out, people should see the assignment of God in your life. I've talked a lot, even with people in my space. Everybody's on social media now, and I love it. I'm out here too. But how do you use your space? What are you saying right now? I made a post a few weeks ago, dear leader. People are watching you. They're watching what you say. They're watching how we go through. They're watching how we talk about crisis. They're watching what we say. They're watching how we move. They're watching how we engage with each other. And when this is over, will we have been a light to the world? Will we rehearse what God has said about it? How are we using this to be a light to people who don't know Christ Jesus? So yes, we have an opportunity to be an example. I'm watching time. I know some of you, like me, have to go into service virtually. His assignment would be to open blinded eyes, to bring prisoners out of prison, and bring those who were out of dark spaces. Again, his message, he is empowered by God to restore and to heal. And yes, I looked at this and I see the very literal application, but there are some people who have eyes that are blinded, and that means blinded by sin. Thank you, Mother Otis. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for sharing. Eyes that have been blinded by sin, blinded by their experience. And he comes to open their blinded eyes to show them that life doesn't have to be this way, that there is a better way. And the prison, when you think about the prison in which some people are in their minds, prison in their emotion, prison in their thought life, prison in the ways that they move. And he comes to free us in those ways. He comes to free in the mind. He comes to free in our emotions. And he comes to free those that were in dark places. And I think about so many people who are in dark places right now. And you see it in the ways that they move. You see it in the ways that they think and the ways that they respond. He comes to deliver us from those dark spaces. Verse 8, I am the Lord, that is my name, and my glory I will not share with another, neither my praise to graven images. Why does he do what he does? He does it because he's God. And here we see, I am. And we've seen this throughout the Old Testament. Who shall I say sent me? That's what Moses asked, right? You tell him I am sent you. I am who? I am the Lord. And he is I am. And you can fill in the blank. He is everything that you need him to be. Everything that you need him to be. And I see someone saying, Sister Karen, he's the light that can draw you out of darkness. So fill in for me. I am. What is God to you? That's my next question. Who is God to you? I am what? And so he says, I am. And because he is, I am, we can have the confidence in every promise that he gives. Everything that he issues, he has the authority to do it. Think about a check. If somebody gives you a check today for $1 million, should you go leaping and dancing and say, look at what the Lord has done? Maybe. But before you go leaping and dancing, you might want to verify two things. Does the signer have authority to issue the check? That's number one. And when that check hits the bank, does it have the authority to clear the bank based on the balance of the person who issued the check? And here, what it's telling us is that God has the authority. We see the authority for him to do everything that he says that he will do. He is capable and he is able. So I listed this as an ability and a capability statement. I see that you're saying God is my everything. God is my provider. I see that he is all that I need, my peace, my light, my all, my breath, my all in all. Thank you, Sister Mika, for being a blessing. He is everything. I see it all. He's a healer. And so many people need to know that he is a healer. And that is still a word for us right now. I'm telling you, this lesson for me is all in where we are right now. And we cannot forget that no matter what we see in media, no matter, I don't even watch the news every day because I want to rehearse who I know God is. And so in my journal this week, I've watched half of the news and I've spent the rest of my time rehearsing who God is and what I know him to be. And I fed my spirit with the fact that he is healing. Yes, we've suffered loss. I've suffered loss this week, but I've also seen a number of testimonies where God is healing and he is bringing us out. He's my keeper. He's my hope. He's my source to every resource. I love what you're saying. He is God, Sister Cheryl. Absolutely. And so God does what he does not for us solely, but he does it for his glory. It's not about our glory. There's no man that should be elevated or made big in this time. And I think you're seeing that. There are men who want to be made big. There are men who want to have the answers to everything. But here we are in a space where the only person who truly has the answer to what's going on right now is God. I don't care how many degrees they have and how many years they've worked in what and what kind of labs they're in and what they think standing at a microphone daily ushering edicts is going to prove. God is the only one who has the answer to what is needed. And he says, I do this for my glory. And there are some situations that we will find ourselves in. And when we come out, they'll be so tough that you yourself don't have the answer. And when you come out, you'll come out with the ability to say, God did it. And he does it because he's not going to share his glory. He's not going to share his credit. I think it was the Message Bible, and I put this in my notes, that used the term, I will not share franchise rights. What does that mean? Franchise rights, or you can buy franchise rights. You can, if you want to own a McDonald's, you can own a McDonald's. If you want to own some other burger establishment or chicken, you can do that. And they will put their name on it and their resources, and you'll walk in the identity of their brand. Thank you, Sister Shirley. But God says, no, I'm not sharing my brand identity with anybody else. That I do, when you see this mark on it, it will be the mark of God. And we know what it means to share identity. I just mentioned a franchise. If you see a giant golden M, no matter where you are in the world, you already know what it is. You already know that you can go in there and get a Big Mac and a large fry and a Diet. You already know this. You know not to go to the large golden M and ask for a Whopper, because that's not their brand. And so God says, I'm not going to share that kind of thing with anybody else. And when I really thought about this, there are a lot of people in the world who are trying to supplement things with God. God is saying, I don't need any help. That I do, I am. And I'm capable of doing it. And I won't share my glory with anybody else. And I won't have my name put on graven images. And so in this space, God doesn't need any help. He doesn't need anybody else to offer anything else. He is God by himself. We're wrapping up in verse 9. He calls them again to look again. Look, behold, the former things have come to pass, and the new things do I declare. Behold, before they spring forth, I tell you of them. He says, listen. I am God. And all of that, I created the earth. But everything that I've said in the past, we find out here that he's the God of the past. He's also the God of the future. So everything that he has said in the past, it's happened just like he said it would. And everything that he's saying about the future, he's saying, if I'm telling it to you, it's going to happen. Now, this is a check that if he writes this check, you can take this one to the bank and you can cash it. He says, I'm telling you about it now. And here's what I love, that we can believe the word of God. When God speaks a word, we can hold on to that word. Sister Bonnie, Jay, thank you so much for being a blessing. I thank you. Thank you, Elder Kelly. When God speaks a word, we can depend on his word. Why? Because I see what you're saying. He's not selling out. He's not sharing glory. He's God all by himself. He does things by himself because he knows everything. When God speaks a word, we know that his identity can't be duplicated. It can't be stolen. When he speaks a word, Sister Shirley Stokes, his word is true. And so he gives us his word that we can depend on. As I go back and look at all of this in context, and I'm wrapping up with my kind of key learnings here, that God, as the author and finisher of our faith, the God, Sister Pamela, who cannot lie, the God, Sister Cheryl, that we can always believe in, the God, Sister Vivian, who is not surprised by anything. He's not surprised by what's going on right now. The God who, even in the middle of this crisis, is still God. He was God then in this lesson to a people who were exiled. Their crisis was being exiled and being in captivity. That was their crisis. And we have our own crisis today. But remember, he's the same God. He sent his servant so that we would know that he has a plan for our rescue. Be reminded that God is at work even in the midst of crisis, even in the midst of their craziness, their uncertainty, their trouble, their trauma. God was already working to bring them out. In the midst of where we are, God is already working to bring us out. That doesn't mean that we won't feel pain along the way, but it means that He is sovereign and He knows what He's doing. God is still God. And in the midst of this, He's working purpose through every single one of us. Our job, and this was hard for the children of Israel, it was hard for Habakkuk. We've been talking about this for weeks, is to trust God's plan. How do we trust Him when we feel like we can't trace Him? You just have to trust Him. You have to know that He's there. And we heard this a few weeks ago in Habakkuk. The just shall live, not by having all the answers right now, but the just are going to live by our faith. And so we can't take our eyes off of God. We have to take our eyes off of ourselves and be reminded that He cares for us. He sent His servant. He sent the Messiah. And this Messiah serves us each day. He is that hero that Israel needed. He's the hero that we need now. He's the hero, not just that we need, but He is present and active in our lives even now. And remember that heroes and servants come in all sorts of ways. And as leaders, as servants, not just leaders, but as servants of the kingdom of God, servants in ministry, servants to our family. In every space you are, I challenge you to use that language and see yourself as a servant, someone who can put aside your needs for what others may need. You don't need the glory for everything that's being done. Learning to serve gracefully and graciously and with mercy as you serve other people. Remember, people don't belong to us. The people belong to God. And as we think about what His servant came to do, it should make us mindful of the ministry of healing and restoration. Healing and restoration. And because this servant is present, and what we know is that the plan of God is sure, His word, He's sovereign, and His plan can't be stopped. So Sister Sharon Scott, you're right. We have to just trust Him. Nice lady, we have to have faith over fear. Absolutely. We have to, Sister Shawnetta, trust in the Lord. Sister Maylene Walker, why? Because His hand is in everything and He is working things out. And we are assured that we have the victory. Why? Not because we're wonderful, but because God cared enough to send a just servant, and that servant being His Son, who ultimately, as we know, will celebrate this week the fact that His Son didn't just come, but He walked out His assignment. He didn't fail. He didn't get discouraged. And that even meant to His own detriment, even when it meant giving His life. And so that's what we'll reflect on this week as we go through. And I hope that it will resonate with you and you'll look at how you serve. And I challenge the children in my video, and I'll challenge you all as well, that today, as part of your ministry, I want you to find 3 servants in your ministry, in your family, and I just want you to send them a note or a post on social media that thanks them for their service, thank them for where they're serving, and speak a word of encouragement to those unsung heroes, those people whose names are not on the flyers, those folks who don't get their pictures on Facebook. I mentioned in our church that the pastoral leadership, it's great to see people in a pulpit. The choir is great. The musicians are great. But Sister Sabrina Winston, you probably never seen her name before, but she's great. And she's great because she leads the custodial ministry. And if she doesn't go in and empty trash cans and clean toilets and those kinds of things, our church wouldn't be the same place. It means something to walk in and there's a spirit of excellence even in the look and the smell of the facility. And that doesn't just happen. So in the spaces that you are, I challenge you to find someone that you can celebrate today as a servant and continue to reflect on your own life and how you can be a better servant of Jesus Christ. You know what I'm going to try to be better about in this space is having you all to submit questions. And so if there were things that you wanted to share in the lesson, feel free to continue to comment in the video. We're going to see comments even after class closes. But I am so honored that you all are present and have shared this lesson with us today. Everybody say cheese for the book. All right. And I am so blessed that you all were here with us today. Wherever you all are having your worship services, enjoy them. Please don't forget to click the thumbs up like button. And I do remind you, thank you to everyone who shared your Sunday school offering in the super chat. Please consider a $3 offering, if you will, to Cash App using that Sunday School Girl, if you are willing to do that, just to continue to support this ministry and all that we're trying to do. I love you all. On tomorrow, it is Markup Monday, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. I will be live here again on YouTube. Thank you, Sister Maddie, for using the super chat. We will be into our lesson, and we're just going to read through it tomorrow and get ready for next week and begin to develop our study plan. I'll have the free template uploaded by tomorrow morning, and we're going to be talking about resurrection hope out of the book of 1 Corinthians. So I will look forward to seeing you on Markup Monday. Everybody go and enjoy the rest of your worship service. Have a great rest of your Sunday. I love you all so much. Thank you for being with me. Bye.